So here's what I'm thinking. We do a song. We will make millions. Ready?
Yes, yeah.
It's going to go, do burpees, be happy.
Yeah, I got it.
Do it? Ready?
Yeah.
Ready? We are here for Spartan Up Podcast. I've got the team, Colonel Nye, Dr. Johnny, and Sefril Allah. It is no longer raining in Pittsfield, which is exciting. We were just laying out in the sun. We've got Jay Jackson this time. Jay Jackson happens to be one of my favorites.
A wrestler,
of course. Trained in the basement, blindfolded for years.
Oh, that's it.
Why is it significant? You'll find out
Joe loves
in just
this,
a few
yeah.
minutes.
Cool.
We are here in Palo Alto for Spartan Up with Jay Jackson. You've heard a lot about Jay from me over the years. All kinds of podcasts and dinner meetings. Wherever I am, I talk about Jay. So what we're not going to do is tell the Jay Jackson story here. You're going to have to find it on another podcast. We're just going to talk about grit. So you're one of the most gritty guys I know. You've wrestled your whole life. You were a coach at Stanford.
Right.
Now you're an assistant principal.
Correct.
Public school must be difficult, right?
Every day. Every day is an adventure.
Every day's a battle.
Yeah.
How do you get success in life? Like, what is there a secret? Is there a pill you take? Can you work out or something? What is it?
It's a tough question. I think if you want to be successful, if you want to keep improving, I think the key is discomfort. And I know you're a proponent of that. I sure am too. I've got to find a way to make myself uncomfortable. And if I do that, then if I do it long enough, pretty soon it's going to be comfortable for me, and then I'm going to improve, and then I've got a new level of discomfort that I have to go towards. When it comes to school, and so we tell our kids quite a bit. They need to get out of their comfort zone, raise their hand, ask some questions. They need to get up in front of the class and say some things. They need to try, work hard, work in groups, help each other out with stuff that makes them uncomfortable. And every time they do that, they're going to be better. They're going to be better prepared for high school. They're going to be better prepared for college or their career after that.
So what you're saying, which we hear a lot, is if you only run 3 miles, if you're comfortable running 3 miles, try running 10.
That's exactly it.
Right?
And then it's going to be tough. You may not make it, but at least you'll have 5 or 6 or 7, and then you've got a new frame of reference. 3 miles doesn't seem as long anymore.
My trick was, just drop me off 10 miles from home. No money, I have to get, right?
Yeah.
You will get 10 miles. You'd be surprised how far you can go.
That's true. We can't do that in school, though, unfortunately. It wouldn't be a bad busing system, though. You could kind of drop them off outside of class.
No, I did that once. That's another story.
Yeah.
But I was with a Delta Force guy recently, and he said, we might have to edit that. He said when they train for fighting on the mats, and they learn jiu-jitsu and wrestling, and they say to the guys, we want you to fight as if you're fighting for your life. And did we lose? Did you lose me? Can you hear me? You good? Fight as if you're fighting for your life. And what you find is no one could really recreate that, right? And what he said was he was surprised at how much tougher someone is when they are fighting for their life. It took me all night to process the only way he would know that, right? But it's like you said, it's hard to push yourself out of a comfort zone.
Well, and let me say this too, and this goes along with the story you referenced earlier, but the further you push yourself out of your comfort zone on purpose, on your own, the better off you're going to be in life, because eventually life is going to
present you with a problem.
It's going to shove you out of your comfort zone. You got to be able to deal with it. Now, if you haven't prepared for that, you're in big trouble. And if you have prepared,
so if you've had a bubble-wrapped life, if everything was given to you, right? So we're doing our next generation a disservice by protecting them and making things easier for them.
You're exactly right. I mean, I see kids that they're getting their first B and they break down. If that's
the way you're parenting,
that's rough. I mean, you gotta make things a little bit difficult if you're going to be a good parent.
By the way, I'm pretty hard on my kids, and I question myself that I'm not hard enough, because instinctually as a parent, you don't really want your kids to have any trouble at all, right? And so you wrestle with that, yeah.
Right.
That's instinctual to protect them.
And I think, I'm forgetting what I'm referencing here, but read it somewhere. But how it's supposed to be is when the kids are younger, you're supposed to take care of them so they know you're there, and then you're supposed to progressively, as time goes on, back off. and make things more difficult for them, make them do the things themselves. And if you do that, you're good. Now my dad made me wrestle, and that was a huge thing for me to get me out of my comfort zone, because you're wearing every practice is brutal. You're wearing a spandex outfit in front of a bunch of people against some guy that may look like a monster, and those are all things that get you out of your comfort zone. So all of a sudden you get to, and my dad kind of pushed me that way. I loved it, but it's something that's really helped me in life. Now a job interview doesn't feel that bad because I get to wear clothes.
You get to wear clothes. You're not
I'm not fighting anybody. Exactly.
And you're not fighting some giant person.
That's
so
exactly.
you have a different frame of reference.
Correct.
Right.
And similarly, I mean, my mom, my dad was my wrestling coach. My mom, coached me how to be a better person. She had this rule of three. You had to ask, anytime you meet someone for the first time, you got to ask them 3 questions about themselves. And that's huge. That got me out of my comfort zone. I didn't want to do it, but what a great thing. What a great thing to teach.
I like that one. That's something new for the Spartan podcast. We've interviewed 116 people, and Jay Jackson brings us you must ask 3 questions when you meet someone new.
That's the Terry Jackson rule of 3.
Richard Branson didn't tell us that.
Yeah.
The CEO of Kodak didn't tell us that. The guy that shot Bin Laden didn't tell us that. You told us that.
That's right.
That's pretty good.
Well, I got that from my mom. I can't take credit, but it's helped me.
And so you use it.
Right, and everything. I think there's different realms of toughness. There's physical toughness. There's academic toughness. There's moral toughness, and that's what my mom was really good at. She's a great person. Did a great job of teaching me.
Why are there so many trucks in this part of California?
That's a great question. I think they're carrying lots of computers around, perhaps.
Yeah.
Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I graduated from this university about 20 years ago. It did not look like this. This is
crazy, right?
This is pretty fancy.
Everybody's going to Google or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So what other tips would you give a young person?
Oh man, I think happiness is the key. And if you're happy first, then the byproduct is going to be all these other great things you want. We have too many kids, for example, that they think that getting into best college or getting an A, that's going to make them happy. But the truth is, if getting best college is going to make you happy, then what's going to happen is you're never going to be happy in high school, because you can't ever get into college when you're in high school.
But back up, doesn't that occur because they don't have the right frame of reference, because they haven't pushed themselves out of their comfort zone? In other words, if you push yourself out of your comfort zone and you had to fight through the jungle for 37 days, right, just to survive, there's no way you would say, I'm going to be unhappy if I don't get in the right college. You'd say, I'm just happy to have shelter.
Right.
Right?
But at the same time, I think you need to focus on the process as opposed to the product completely. If your only focus is that product, you have to have the goals. Goals happen. But if you focus on the process and what you learned and what you did, like if I'm getting out of the jungle, I learned different things on my way, and it's going to make me a better person. It's going to make me, and I'm going to be proud of myself too. I'm going to learn throughout that process. If the entire focus is on the product, then you don't care how you did. We have kids that, the entire focus is getting in this college. They don't care if they cheat. They don't care how they do it. That's not good. You need to focus on that process. And if you focus on the process and not, then
the training leading up to the Olympics.
Correct. It's gonna make you happy, because if you do that, then you're proud of yourself. You're learning. It's a great experience.
We had somebody say to us, keep that thought. We had somebody say to us, you have to use the 3 words, I get to. In other words, I get to train every day, right? I get to sweat. I get to breathe heavy.
Right.
Once you think that way, then you start to enjoy it. It's a privilege, right? Because some people can't do that. They're missing legs, they're dead, whatever. Then you're not focused on the product.
Right.
Right?
And how many kids are saying, I get to go to school, as opposed to I have to go?
Right.
That's rough. If you can change your mind about that. And I'm also going to say, if you focus on the process and then you get a C in a class, no big deal. I know what I did, and I know what I learned, and if I worked hard and I'm proud of that, then that's worth it.
Make some adjustments.
Without a doubt.
Let's take a break. We'll go buy a computer and we'll come back.
Absolutely.
I hope you're not sitting still while you listen. If you are, you better get a burpee break in.
All right, we're back, and we want to talk about process versus product. So you said, because we're telling people all the time, and we're hearing this in podcasts, you've got to set a goal. Because if you don't have a goal, you don't know where you're going.
Right.
Goal is getting the best college. But you're saying, yeah, that's nice, but there's 3 or 4 years to get there, and you should focus on the 3 or 4 years to get there.
You need to focus on what you're doing right now, and the byproduct is going to be that the good things are going to happen. If I enjoy my training with wrestling or whatever sport I'm doing, and I love it, and I get to practice that sort of thing, then I'm going to be enjoying it all along the way, and then the byproduct is going to be this other thing. I'm saying have the goal, but be aware of how you're getting there. You know, the goal is with Spartan Race. The goal is you sign up for the Spartan Race. You know, and now you got to train for it. And if you're dreading the training, then what's the point?
Right.
I mean, you're gonna get through it, and you're gonna do it hopefully. But why not be the person that's like, this is awesome?
No, I used to say when it came to races, I used to say the day of the race is really just a catered training day, right? It's all the hard work that led up to that day.
It's Christmas morning is the way it should be.
That's right.
I've waited this whole time. It's all the hype, and you know I've done what I need to do, and all of a sudden, let's go. I mean,
And you know, you're right. In percentage terms too, 90% of your life is spent on the way to
right.
whatever.
You're right.
So you better enjoy that,
Yeah, it's
right?
you know that's life.
Right.
The blip is when you get into those things, but the rest of it, that's the
Is
big
the work.
chunk. Yeah, and it's hard to understand that concept because, you know, it's
How do
difficult.
How do you teach kids that?
You brainwash them,
Right.
and I hate to say that, but you know, you get them with those affirmations. I got this. I can do this. This is awesome. I love it. And if you can convince yourself, like I'm an assistant principal. It's not the best job to have in the world. You're basically telling kids that get in trouble to stop getting in trouble. You give them their punishments. Everyone yells at you.
Right.
You know, but for me, I'm going to find a way to love what I do. You know, and I'm going to enjoy the process. So I'll do weird things to keep myself entertained. You know, we've got a computer program shows us different kids' pictures, and I'll randomly pick a kid and I'll try and find them in the hallway, say hi to them, and freak them out. You know, that I don't know, and they want to know how you know their name, that kind of thing. You know, and if I'm in a situation that's, you know, I see it's an uncomfortable situation, some parents raging in there, I got to put a smile on my face and say, let's go. You know, I'm going to head towards that thing because, frankly, when I'm done with it, I'm going to be better. I'm going to learn something.
You're going
from
into
that
the
experience.
firefight.
You can't run
Head
away from
on.
the fire.
What could you mandatory, you know, make it mandatory to do like a 1 minute burpee minute every day in school? Could you do that?
Can we force them to?
Yeah, send an alarm and say we're doing burpees for a minute. Is that allowed?
They could. I'm assuming they can opt out of it, but you could do it. You could do it and just see what
And
happens.
it wouldn't really work if kids could say, "Hey, I'm not doing it."
No, it wouldn't work. But the truth is, the kid that doesn't do it, that protests, is going to look at the other kids, and frankly, they're going to be proud of themselves for having done it, even if it's 1 minute of burpees.
Yeah.
And the other kid's going to sit there and say, "Gosh, why didn't I do that?" That's my opinion. You know, because in the grand scheme of things, you want to do stuff that you're proud of, and sitting there, it's not very tough.
Yeah, because I would imagine there are a lot of kids that aren't wrestling. They're not training, right? They're rolling out of bed, rolling right into school, barely sleepwalking through classes. If you started to institute 9 a.m. burpees, noon burpees, 3 o'clock burpees, you might see some interesting results.
You know, they would actually, kids would probably encourage it because there's so much sitting in a school day and listening. Think of how much, take a specific student, think about how much they talk in a school day.
Right.
You know, how much they sit and how much they talk. And the sitting is a lot, the talking is very little. You know, there's some teachers that do it right. There's some teachers that it's student focused, but for the most part, you're sitting there listening. And if you rang a bell where they get to get up, I'd love it.
They might do it.
Maybe that's my warped head though. But
How many kids are in your school?
About 2,200 kids.
2,200.
Yeah.
We could really get a movement. 2,200 kids doing burpees 3 times a day.
If we could have you do a video,
I would do it in 2 seconds.
We could share it to them, give them a challenge, and then say we'll do it. We'll do it.
Would you be allowed? Could we say if they did it for a period of time, they get something?
Yeah.
Is that you allowed to do that in a public school?
Without a doubt. I want to hear you keep talking because I want to see what levels you're going to go to, and I'm willing to try stuff.
I think they should get something that says, just like we talked about Jay Robinson's wrestling camp, that says I did it. I think Bikram Yoga has a 30-day challenge. You got to do yoga every day for 30 days. We should do, if you're allowed, 3 times a day burpees for 1 minute. The kids that do it, they get some shirt at the end, right?
And that's fine. I think that's good stuff.
Right.
And the tough part, the thing you're fighting against, the kids might start sweating, and they get concerned about that.
They don't want to sweat in school.
Yeah, that's uncomfortable for them.
Right.
Make it happen. That's what
make it happen.
I say.
Yeah. I'd be happy to come and speak to all 2,200 kids.
We're here in the Silicon Valley. We've got some great kids. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But we've got kids that need to toughen up academically. We've got kids that need to toughen up physically, and we got kids that need to toughen up, morally. And these are all, they need the message. I mean, frankly, grit is the catch-all for me. If you can persist,
that somehow,
if you can persist and you can do that in every area of your life, then
You win.
you're
win.
going to be successful. That's what we're talking about.
So are these
getting
22?
better.
What percentage of these 2,200 kids are laser focused on success?
Quite a few. And it depends on your definition of success. If it's your definition of success is happiness, it's not a huge percentage. But if your definition of success is getting into a good college, a lot of laser focused kids.
They're all focused on getting in a good college.
Right, and I'm telling you, that happiness, you're happy and you're focused on the now, and the byproduct's going to be those things. That's what we need to focus on. What we have in education is mixed up. You've got the focus is on getting into this college, and then you think you're going to be happy.
Not all the work.
But you're happy for a short period of time. Then once you get into that college, then you're like,
we interviewed a happiness professor at Cornell, and he said it's the experiences that people do that they derive happiness from. It's not the products.
Right.
Right. And so it's what you're saying.
See, and I've got to say this too. As a school, we've got to be responsible for that. We've got to create the context for the kids to be happy and learn at the same time. Because if it's a lecture, no kid ever said, remember that lecture? That was awesome. It's always the project. It's always the thing that challenged them a little bit, got them out of their comfort zone.
Let's create a song. Don't worry, be happy. Remember that? I was singing it to myself the other day. I did 600 burpees. It's do burpees, be happy.
Okay.
We could play it off that song, and maybe
you and I
do it.
Record that.
Yeah, we record it.
I have a bell-like singing voice. I mean, it's beautiful, and I can only imagine yours has got to be good too.
I could have been a singer.
Yeah. Well, that's good stuff. We record that. We sell it to schools and
sell it to schools.
You and I multimillionaires.
Retire.
Okay.
You're awesome.
I'm into that.
That was good.
Good stuff.
Where are you going now?
I'm going home.
You got your suit on.
No, this is my school.
The school?
School uniform.
And you're still wrestling?
When I can. Yeah, I'm doing the jiu-jitsu stuff now.
Got it.
Which is wrestling for old guys. What it is.
Yeah.
Don't tell the jiu-jitsu
If you
guys
put
what
last question, you put an MMA jiu-jitsu guy against an American wrestler, who wins?
Depends. On the feet, the wrestler's going to win. On the mat, jiu-jitsu guy has advantage. What you want is the wrestler that does jiu-jitsu or the jiu-jitsu that learns wrestling.
Got it. And you got something?
Oh, I think so.
Any other skills that you'd throw in there?
Well, you got to be able to punch and kick.
Right.
So you got to be able.
So kickboxer.
You got to be good at all three.
Right. But at the core, American wrestling.
Yeah, I'm biased. Biased. That sport is it's so freaking hard. And I've never done the Muay Thai. I've only done jiu-jitsu for a little bit. And I marvel at what those guys can do. But wrestling is when it comes to a combination of aerobic, anaerobic, and just plain, you got to be tough. That's it.
Can't beat it.
It's tough.
You're awesome.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So that one resonated with me. As you know, I'm a wrestler, and was a wrestler and a wrestling coach. So I really loved it. Well, it's funny. Joe loves the whole wrestling angle, and so many people. I love when you get surprised when it's like there are people you bring because of wrestlers, and other ones you go, I knew it. And but this guy, like a lot of the same lessons applied that come from that. But the one thing I didn't hear, you'd referenced a story about training blindfold in the basement for years. Didn't come up, so I want to hear it.
Yeah. So Jay and I have actually known each other a while, well before this interview. And the reason I know about Jay is someone told me about him and said, listen, Jay grew up with his brother. Their dad was an ex-Green Beret. He was extremely tough on them and had them down in the basement, the two brothers, training for over a decade blindfolded at night after dinner. They would do their normal wrestling practice, their normal football practice, whatever season it was. But after dinner, it was a ritual at home, down the basement, blindfolded, wrestling. Lights out. The reason was the dad figured if they could wrestle in the dark, they'd be much better in the light. Fast forward 10, 15 years, Jay becomes one of the coaches at Stanford. While at Stanford, he allows neighborhood kids to come mix it up like many colleges do so that they have new opponents, the teammates. One of the opponents turns out to be a weird kid. Kid says, Coach, I got nowhere to sleep tonight. Jay says, don't worry about it. You can stay on my couch. Lets him on the couch. 2 a.m., Jay wakes up with a gun to his head. This guy had been casing him. Guy had been coming to the practices, had his focus on the coach. He's going to kill Jay. Zip ties him to a chair, zip ties his legs, blindfolds him, pillowcase over his head, duct tapes it, points the gun to his head, and is going to shoot him. Jay asks, through the muffled pillowcase, could you shut the lights before you pull the trigger? And
turn off the lights.
Turn off the lights. Perpetrator obliges, shuts the lights, and that's all Jay needed. Jay had been training in the dark for over a decade. Anyway, as Colonel Nye would say, Jay secures the the room, somehow beats the shit out of the guy while tied to a chair, blindfolded, pins him on the ground, calls 911 from behind his back. The police break down the door, come in, and it looks like a scene out of Pulp Fiction, right? You got a guy tied to a chair with a pillowcase over his head, on top, holding another guy down. That's a bloody mess. They called the dad, and they said, we got to tell you, we've been to car crashes, motorcycle accidents, never seen anybody beaten as bad as what your son did to this guy. So sometimes parents do the right thing.
What's the lesson? The lesson is
my kids are training
in the dark.
In the dark
Yeah.
every night, blindfolded from now on.
It's an amazing story.
Yeah, and I think a big lesson he says, all right, so when you take away one of your senses, right, the other senses get more geared up. And the big thing he talks about is be in discomfort. Like you say, if you're used to running 3 miles, then run 10. Always be pushing that wall back of what your discomfort level is, so it's always increasing. Taking cold showers, whatever it is, you know. So that was a big takeaway for me.
Yeah, I had a couple takeaways from it, other than that story, which is great. But, he talked about, it reminded me of the other wrestler with Kyle Dake. We're talking about his mother. Your friend here also talks about his mother and about how she told him that when you meet somebody, you ask them 3 questions. And it's just a way to interact with people, but it makes you then, kind of buy into them and learn something about them. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then the other part that really stuck with me is because it reminds me of, change a reference. I have to train or I have to do something versus he says, I get to wrestle. Right. I get to train. I get to go run, all this stuff. So it's not that you have to. And during my career in the military, as soon as you tell somebody you're in the military, they'll always look at you lately and say, oh, almost sadly, and then, did you have to go to Iraq? Did you have to go to Afghanistan? You're like,
my twin brother would say, you got to go.
Yeah, right.
There.
I got to go. I wanted to go. What do you think I signed up for? That's what. So it's a different frame of reference.
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't have to go. I wanted to go.
General Van Twerp I met said to me when they would interview people, if somebody said, I have to versus I get to, they weren't getting the job.
Right.
He wants to hear, as any employer would, I get to do that.
See, vernacular is very important, everyone.
Vernacular.
Vernacular. That could be. It could be
If
Sephra's
you want to know what
vernacular.
vernacular means, go to Sephra's glossary.
For show notes, video, and audio of this episode, visit SpartanUpPodcast.com/070 or follow us on Twitter at SpartanUpPod. The Spartan Up Podcast is brought to you by Spartan.
To find a race near you, visit Spartan.com.